the co-director of the Gulf Center for Human Rights, thinks that the killing will further destabilize the Arab world.
Now, looking inside Saudi Arabia, you find that there is no possibility of just and fair trials according to international standards. So there's no way that any of these executions carried out today came as a result of a just and fair trial. The execution of Sheikh Nimr definitely is going to incite more sectarianism in the region and will definitely make the situation worse in different places, not just in Saudi Arabia. It's very problematic that Saudi Arabia enjoys a state of international impunity, which of course enables and feeds into the local lack of accountability that exists as well. So even if there are statements or a reaction, which is yet to be seen from places like the United States and the United Kingdom, I doubt that it will be more than a slap on the wrist for the Saudis by their allies.
Iran, as the leading Shia Muslim power in the region, has a long history of disputes with Saudi Arabia, which is led by a hardline Sunni monarchy. Both governments have accused each other of supporting terrorism, and some of those allegations relate to the Syrian conflict, where the countries back opposing sides. Saudi Arabia is a close U.S. ally, whereas Iran has strongly opposed Washington's influence since the 1979 revolution. Both states are major oil producers with conflicting strategies within OPEC. Meanwhile, in Lebanon and Iraq, leading Shia Muslim figures said that the cleric's killing was a service to Islamic State and warned that it has opened the gates of hell and will, quote, set the region on fire. Some even called it the execution of reason and dialogue. Reaction has been pouring in from across the region and beyond from officials.
This case raises serious concerns regarding freedom of expression and the respect of basic civil and political rights.
The execution of prominent Shiite cleric and political activist Nimr al-Nimr risks exacerbating sectarian tensions at a time when they urgently need to be reduced.
I'm now joined by Ajamu Baraka live, who is an associate fellow at the Institute for Policy Studies. Thank you for being with us here on RT International. A very complex situation indeed. Now, we know that the United States is a close ally of Saudi Arabia. We just heard from the U.S. State Department that they have criticized these executions. Could this signal a shift in U.S.-Saudi relationship?
I don't think so, no. The relationship between the Saudis and the U.S. is a very strong one. It is, of course, strategic. It's not in any way based on any kind of moral concerns about the nature of the Saudi regime. If that was a question or a problem for U.S. officials, they would not be involved in providing the kind of political, logistical support that they have given to the Saudi government in places like Yemen. They would not have cooperated with the Saudi government in providing material support for many people believed to be terrorist organizations in Syria. So, no, the connection between the Saudis and the U.S. in terms of shared strategic interests will remain solid.
Now, we have many different layers that we're working with here. We have the Shia-Sunni conflict. We also have ethnic diversity here between Arabs and Persians. And we also have political divides as well. What international impact do you expect from this dispute between Iran and Saudi Arabia?
Well, it's going to be a continuation of business as usual. Of course, there will be a continuation of some of the outcries from across the region in particular among the Shiite populations. But the larger geopolitical objectives in places like Syria and in Yemen will continue. The relationship between the Saudis and the U.S. And members of NATO will continue in their efforts to undermine the legitimate government in Syria. So this will be a temporary issue. It will blow over, I believe, in a few days. And the Saudis will continue to be able to export their brand of Wahhabist terrorism and with impunity.
Well, you bring up a good point. A lot of focus is on what's happening in Syria, but you mentioned Yemen. Let's go back to that for a second. Saudi Arabia has been conducting airstrikes against Shia Houthi rebels in Yemen since March, a conflict that has claimed thousands of lives there. Shouldn't the U.S. be more concerned about this and other acts of terror as well?
Again, they should be, but we know that basically in the initial stages of the assault by the Saudis in Yemen, they were fully supported by the U.S. They were given targeted information and other logistical support. They were given political cover. The Saudis were able to pull off something in the Human Rights Council that even Israel was unable to do, and that is to stop an investigation of their activities in Yemen with the full support of the U.S. government. So yes, if the U.S. government was concerned about human rights, concerned about international law, they would impose some constraints on their Saudi allies. But of course, that is not the agenda of the U.S. They share an agenda with advancing their particular version of how the Mideast configuration of power should be structured.
All right, now, Iran, obviously upset here, and world powers, they recently reached a breakthrough deal on the country's nuclear program. Could this dispute undermine those diplomatic efforts?
I don't think that the ongoing dispute right now will have no measurable impact on those efforts. Of course, the Saudis wanted to undermine that agreement, and they were unable to do that because the U.S. has its own particular interests that in this case didn't correspond with that of the Saudis. So no, there will be no measurable impact, no shift in the policies as a consequence of this horrific series of executions that took place not too long ago.
All right, so it sounds like you're saying just business as usual, no change in the geopolitical scale there as a result of this
Never.
incident. All right,
No, never.
Jamu Baraka, Associate Fellow at the Institute for Policy Studies. Thank you very much. Very interesting to hear your thoughts right here on RT International.
My pleasure.
Now, human rights organizations have consistently slammed Saudi Arabia's rights record. Here are some examples of how the kingdom deals with people it considers to be a threat to stability. One woman was beheaded for witchcraft and sorcery. This was back in 2011. Another was jailed for a campaign against a nationwide ban on female drivers. And Raif Badawi, a blogger, was sentenced to 1,000 lashes and 10 years in jail for insulting Islam on the internet. However, Saudi Arabia was recently appointed to chair a panel at the UN Human Rights Council. That decision was widely dismissed as hypocritical. To other news now.